Mabuhay ang mga Filipinos. Mabuhay ang mga Filipinos versus mabuhay ang Pilipinas. This one is talking about people, ang mga Filipinos. Ang Pilipinas talks about a collective identity. It was very interesting to me, the statement is long live the people, the individuals, not just the collective identity. It's a great story, something that people from developing nations can relate to. The reality of how these problems more than 100 years ago are still present in the Philippines today. There's a scene where there's a student, nahihirapan siyang matuto, and they're having a hard time learning because they're being forced to learn in Latin, and they would love to respond in either Spanish or in Filipino or Tagalog, and the Spanish priest calls him a heretic. A heretic. A heretic is someone who renounces the faith. He calls him a heretic for not speaking Latin. Saan naman ang galing yun? Paano ka naging heretic kung di ka nagsasalita? I was fighting tears the whole time watching the movie. Now, for our pop culture segment for today, or should I say pop culture or culture? I don't know. Now, for our culture segment for today, I want to talk about the movie Gomburza. Recently won Best Picture with the 2023 Metro Manila Film Festival. I don't know how many of you saw it. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Especially if you're Filipino. But even if you're not, I think it's still a great story. It's something that people from developing nations can relate to. Coming from Western colonization. The reality of like how these problems more than 100 years ago are still present in the Philippines today. We're still wrestling with what does it mean to be Filipino? What is the relationship of church and state? Well, how do the comfortable and the richer people advocate for ideas only to let the poorer people take the fall for it? It's a beautiful story. Quick summary, it's about the Filipino priests, Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora, who were unjustly blamed by the Spanish colonizers for a mutiny. And they were executed to teach the country a lesson.
First time.
And, to keep people down, to control the nation, and they would end up being the spark that lit the fire for Philippine Revolution that would eventually lead to our independence. Amazing film. I'm not really a film reviewer myself, but I think it deserved all of its awards. Best Picture, Best Director for Pepe Jokno, Best Actor for Cedric Juan. Amazing guy. I've never seen him before, but man, super galing. Best Cinematography, Production Design, and Sound. So a few comments about the movie that I want to make. I loved how it was just the simple story. It's the story we've heard since grade school. And I like that in historical films. I don't like, somebody said it well, why would you make a historical film and then distort it and then add all of these weird things that never really happened when the real version is actually much more interesting? Hello, Napoleon. Okay, but why would you do that with that film? And then I love how they stuck to the story. Also, it's very straightforward. I don't feel a lot of unnecessary digressions. And yet, the pacing felt just on point. I never felt like they were dragging. It's just like a slow look kasi on everybody's development and how they all responded differently. Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora all responded differently to the tragedy that happened to them. And I loved how the movie captured that. I want to talk about three things specifically from it, especially as a Christian, as a believer, and how we can look at this movie with a biblical lens, with God's lenses, and how does it make sense with a biblical worldview? Three parts of the movie that I really want to highlight. Number one, there's this powerful scene where I think it's Gomez who quotes Romans 8:18. And he says it in Tagalog, but I'm going to read it in English. And they're trying to say, why would this happen to us? How could this happen? Where's the justice in the world? And he says, I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. And he makes that quote. And it's a beautiful moment in the film. And I was fighting tears the whole time watching the movie. But then at that part, I wanted to mapigilan, but umiyak talaga ako nun. And it was so powerful because, I've seen that verse while reading the Bible. I've seen it on my phone. I've seen it in my physical Bible. I've seen it on social media posts. I've seen it preached from a service. But to hear it quoted by a man who's unjustly in prison. And people are, and you're seeing the triumph of evil. You're seeing the triumph of injustice and oppression. You're so mad na parang walang hostisya. And for him to say that, and it was, in my opinion, much closer to the spirit of when Paul wrote this. And when the early church read this. To go through hardship and suffering and trial to say, oh, this suffering is not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. I believe that was the mindset of those priests. And I don't believe it's like the glory of being immortalized in MMFF, or the glory of being a figure in history. First of all, they had no idea that would possibly happen to them. And secondly, what about all the people who don't have movies made after them? No, but it's the glory that God has for you, of God who sees what we're going through and who will wipe away every tear and turn every wrong thing and make it right. So that's the first thing. I love that scene, Romans 8:18. Beautiful moment. Just for that part, parang sulit na panoorin yung buong movie. Second thing I want to point out that the movie captures really well is the reality of the intersection of our faith and other interests. Christianity and politics. Christianity and colonialism. Christianity and nationalism. Christianity and greed. Christianity and power plays. Christianity and injustice. Christianity and racism. And how the church and the Bible and theology were used in other ways. In ways to subjugate a nation. In ways to step on people. To keep them down. In ways that are not consistent with God's word. Not consistent with the life of Jesus. And yet, because of ignorance, people want to use it for that. There's a scene where there's a student, nahihirapan siyang matuto, and they're having a hard time learning because they're being forced to learn in Latin, and they would love to respond in either Spanish or in Filipino or Tagalog, and the Spanish priest calls him a heretic. A heretic. A heretic is someone who renounces the faith. He calls him a heretic for not speaking Latin. Saan naman ang galing yun? Paano ka naging heretic kung di ka nagsasalita? What? It's for control. It's for colonialism. And then the documentary, if you don't have time to watch the movie, you can look at the documentary online. Just search for it, Gomburza documentary. And they talk about the history of this, how the Spanish priests, the friars, were the long-standing versions of the civil government, because the civil government officials would come and go, but it was the friars who really stayed. So they had the power, and they wanted to control that power. They knew the people's secrets because they would confess their sins to them, and they would use that knowledge to manipulate things around them. That's the problem. It's that intersection of faith, other agendas. That's dangerous. Now, I'm not saying that Christianity and nationalism, politics, economics should never intersect. They should. And if we really live out our faith, if we really do have a faith in Jesus, it will transform the way we live, which means it'll affect the way we make money, the way we relate to each other, the way we are on social media. But the question is, who is influencing who? Because in the movie, what you're seeing, and too often in real life, throughout history, is the other way around. It's the need for power, the lust for money. It's not faith influencing the way they lead the nation or the way they teach the people. It's racism, oppression, greed. It's a lust for power. That's the mistake. And so, is our faith being shaped by our political goals, our economic goal, our own tribes? Is Jesus really Lord of our lives, or is he just a prop that we use? That's the problem. And I think the film captured that tension. And really, until now, the effects of that is still something that we need to wrestle with as believers. Third thing I want to highlight is that ending sentence. And if you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen this, but they said, "Mabuhay ang mga Filipinos," which I would normally expect them to say, "Mabuhay ang Pilipinas." Mabuhay ang mga Filipinos versus mabuhay ang Pilipinas. First thing I noticed was why ang mga Filipinos, why F, right? And normally I would think P. It made me think, the thought about this one is talking about people, ang mga Filipinos. Ang Pilipinas talks about a collective identity. It's a label. It's an institution. It was very interesting to me. The statement is, long live the people, the individuals, not just the collective identity. Sometimes collective identities, they're great for shorthand in helping us get to know people, in helping us love people. But too often, these labels are used to segment people, to separate people, to the point that we're only talking about collective identities and not about people. I can't tell you the number of times that in my years, even in ministry, where I would think I'm doing something for the church, but I don't love individuals. I'm irritated at this volunteer who showed up late. I'm mad at this guy for having issues. It's like, wait a minute, how can I say I'm doing this for the church, but for the individuals who make up the church, it's not the same thing. And my loyalties, my passions, my priorities end up going to the label more than to the individual. I'm not saying the labels are bad. All right? The question is, how do we understand it? What's our relationship with it? There's a quote by C.S. Lewis that I really find helpful, and it's from his book, The Weight of Glory. It's a good reminder about how all of these collective things, businesses, institutions, organizations, Rotary clubs, schools, hospitals, are only valuable to the extent that they build up the truly eternal thing, which is a human soul, a human person, a human spirit. C.S. Lewis writes, there are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilization, these are mortal. And their life is to ours as the life of a gnat, small insect. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit, cancel online, maybe even ghost, creep on, stalk, whatever. Immortal horrors or everlasting splendors. The point that C.S. Lewis is making here is that human beings are valuable. All the things that we give our lives for a better car, a better social media following, whatever, it is a person. People are the most valuable thing. And Jesus knows that. That's why he died for people. Immortal horrors or everlasting splendors, he says, because we are made from a spirit that is eternal. What happens is we're going to live forever. Either forever beholding God, looking at him, becoming more like him, or becoming further from him. And it's a great reminder. Nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, collective labels, these are mortal, he says. People are immortal. People are eternally valuable. And I love how Gomburza the movie highlights that. It's about the people. What are we talking about here? A bunch of islands, natural resources to exploit. It's about the people. So yeah, go watch it. Gomburza, great movie. Would love to hear your thoughts as well. If there's other insights or Easter eggs you saw that I missed, I'd love to hear what you think about it.